I love running. Running changed my life. I feel like in a world where I feel a lot of people are under a lot of pressure all the time and a lot of things are outside of your control. This is like its own thing that can just be for you.
Today we're here with Matthew Meyer, host of Running World's new How to Start Running program. We're just going to dive right into it, if you don't mind speaking on it right away. Tell us about the How to Start Running program.
Well, the How to Start Running program is really aimed at someone who's been unsure if running is right for them. And we all know that running's for everybody. And this is really that chance to take the first step and hopefully answer some questions that people have been wondering, is this the place for me?
What feels like a question someone might ask to figure that out?
I think a lot of the questions people ask is like, what do I start with? What's the first thing I need to do? Like, how do you become a runner, right? Especially when most runners are like, oh, you see someone completing a marathon or ultras or running extremely fast. Sometimes that feels a little unapproachable to people and they don't know how someone would start from zero and end up there. So we're trying to give people the nice, warm welcome.
Like a one step at a time
Very,
approach.
very one step at a time approach. Answering, sometimes there are questions that people think are like silly to ask. Like, where do I get running shoes at? What would the beginning of my running program look like? How many times should I run? How far should I run? A lot of times people feel silly asking introductory questions. And so hopefully we answer a lot of those questions.
What would you tell someone who isn't sure if running was right for them? What would you be like your one-line selling point?
I think that running is for everybody, and just give it a chance. It might change your life.
Do you think running is even for the people that are like, I don't like running, every time I run, it's a painful experience for me? Do you think everyone is capable of enjoying it?
I think that everyone is capable of enjoying running in some capacity, whatever that looks like. When I work with athletes, the first thing I usually say is, just give me a month. Give me a month. It's going to be challenging when you start any new thing. Little bites, one at a time. That's usually how we make something a lot more approachable. So same thing with running.
So with the program, it is, like you're saying, meant to be very digestible, meant to be very easy for someone who is not crazy about running to find love for it, find routine with it. What are some things that will be learned in the program?
In the program, we go over a lot of the basics as far as like, what's the frequency for your running? Should we start running all the time or can we incorporate walking? What does your nutrition look like? Like, what should I eat before I run? We go over a lot of those things that most of the time people kind of figure out by trial and error. So hopefully we're taking out some of that trial and error part for you and we can just go straight to the success.
I mean, actually speaking on trial and error, which I'm more than happy to talk about, what is a common mistake for first-time runners that people typically think that this is what you're supposed to do or something that they are just completely unaware of?
I think a lot of people think that the only way to get into running is to jump in head first, which is an option, right? I'll talk to people even that are like, I haven't started, I've never ran before. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna run for 2 months and not take a day off. And I'm like, that is a really great goal, but not necessarily like, it doesn't really set you up for success. We want something something that's achievable. When we hold ourselves to that like very intense, like 0 to 100 standard, the chance of fall off is just really high. So thinking about what can I do consistent 1 week at a time. Yeah, like I think the phrase I always like come back to is consistency is key. And what can we do to set ourselves up best to maintain that consistency? Does that mean, all right, we only run 2 times a week, 3 times a week to start? Fantastic. Once that feels good, then we continue to build. Most people just kind of want to ramp up right away, little bites.
What does a first week or 3 weeks of running look like for someone who's just getting started?
What we go over in the program a lot is a walk-run protocol. So thinking, if I already feel comfortable running, or if I already feel comfortable walking for 30 minutes continuously, now we're gonna start incorporating small intervals where I'm going to run for 30 seconds to a minute, and then I'm going to walk for 2 to 3 minutes. And from there, we just take a little bit bigger bites each week. So maybe that first week, we do 30 seconds to a minute. Once that starts to feel good, we're going to increase those intervals, thinking I'm going to go out for like 2-minute run and maybe a 2-minute walk. Either I'm going to increase that time of running or I'm going to decrease the walking time. Overall, we're just looking to increase your time on feet a little bit every week.
I mean, it's kind of like you were saying there, where when you have those high aspirations, like you said, like, oh, when someone's like, oh, I'm just going to do 2 months, go out, I'm going to do it every day. The moment you don't meet that mark or you start to falter, you kind of just let yourself completely dive and you're like, all right, well, I messed up. I'm done with it. So I think that's a very good approach where you just take it in kind of partial steps, something more attainable.
You have to set yourself up for success. Like my coach always talks to me, like as a coach, I think coaches need coaches. We always want to like give ourselves the best chance. And so we understand that perfection is a complete illusion. And if we assume like I'm a regular person, I have other obligations in my life. So if I set up like intentional days off, this is going to work out great because maybe I had a long day at work and I actually need that day off. This works out great in my schedule and it's not like I'm missing out on anything when I planned to take the day like that.
I mean, I think exactly right there where people feel resting is not working out. They see it as kind of like a step away from it when built in, you need that to keep letting your body grow and heal and recover and see what you need to do.
I'm a big no days off guy. And by no days off, for me, that means every day I'm doing something that improves my running. Now, some days that is going for a run. Some days it's really prioritizing recovery, and that's actually what's going to be what's best for me going forward. As long as like I keep that kind of growth mindset where every day I'm doing something, whatever that looks like, it's gonna make me a little better.
Mm-hmm. Taking a rest day is progress.
Taking rest day is key,
Yeah.
right? That's where like we spend a lot of the week doing the work and building. Your body doesn't process that until you recover.
What about for people, since it's hard to stick to a plan every single day, things come up all the time, you get sick, your kid gets sick, whatever it might be. Well, how do you remind people that it's okay to miss a day here and there and how to just get back on track?
In the same way that you don't let like 1 minute ruin your day, you don't let one day ruin your week, you don't let that ruin your month. It's all about consistency, little bites at a time. Like we keep saying that, all right, I missed one day. I'm not gonna let this one day that I missed throw me off for the rest of the week. I go, hey, I have flexibility. I'm just gonna bump this, or maybe I'm not even gonna try to bump it, and I'll just focus on the next thing going forward.
I've never even heard that phrase before, don't let 1 minute ruin your day. That's a very nice saying.
It's pretty good.
I'm probably gonna carry that with me a bit. So,
Good reminder.
say someone starts endeavoring into the program a bit and they're a fledgling runner, they've been running 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. What feels like maybe a physical shift or a mental shift when it is less a new experience and now a habit? Like, what do you think is a good signifying moment for that?
I'm thinking like when I first started running.
When was that?
I think I'm coming up on like almost 10 years of running. For new runners, I think that really the moment you realize you're making progress is, say you're on a run and you are appreciating, like whether we're outside or maybe we're on a treadmill and we're listening to a podcast or something, where you notice something else outside of your running, where you're like, oh, you can actually let your mind go for a little bit and you're thinking like, wow, look at that really lovely tree. It's gorgeous when the leaves change this time of year. And you think, wait, I wasn't thinking about running every single step. I just kind of got into it. And like maybe even early in the day you thought, oh, I'm excited to go for my run. I feel like those are the little steps, because at the beginning it's like just each run feels like a big undertaking. And once those kind of start to get some momentum, we start to notice those other things like, wow, I haven't been outside at this time of the day and this is really nice. And other things start to like show up to you and the running feels a little bit easier every time.
I think that's what makes running so addicting for people, is it really does meld mind with body, and just that it gives you that moment of lucidity where you just feel very attuned to yourself and everything in your environment. I think that's what pulls people into it.
Absolutely.
Helps you be more present.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you appreciate just whatever moment you're in. You're feeling your body moving, your mind's wandering. I think it's a beautiful conjunction between the two.
I find that, especially now, my attention's getting pulled 15 ways throughout the day. I've got emails, calls, I'm working with people face to face. There's always something going on, and running is my time. Some people really like to bring music with them. I really like to go either just like with my friends or by myself, and it's like the most calming moment of my day where I'm just out. I like to listen to my feet crunching on the ground, whatever it is. It's the time to really kind of like feel where I'm at, feel where my body, and it's just reset for the rest of my day.
Would you say like that being present is a good motivating factor when people are kind of feeling like the novelty wear off and they're not sure how to keep going? Like, what are some ways to really hone in and keep that motivation?
For that, like I think if you can pull back into yourself on that, like going out on that run where I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm feeling it today. Take it as that chance to be like, I'm going to be really introspective on this one. I'm gonna like kind of fill out this whole interior life, feel out where I'm at. Maybe you take it as a chance to be like, I'm going to use this as like an opportunity to let go some things I had earlier in my day. That is something that always keeps me coming back, especially because I think motivation is a waxing and waning thing. Like some days you feel really motivated. Some days it's really tough, but a habit is something that just like feels very regular and consistent. And for me, running's like that habit where it's like, all right, this is just like part of my day now. It's like how I go through the world. It's how I take care of myself.
With you being an experiential runner, like you said, running for about a decade now, and working with this program, getting it in motion, was there anything that you felt like you were learning while assembling and helping construct this program?
I feel like it's really taken me back to where I was at when I first started running, where I've been kind of going through and asking myself questions like, what were the things I wish someone had told me? Is almost all of it was just like, oh, I'm gonna figure this out as I go. And like, I remember I started running around my apartment because that was, I didn't know, I didn't have a watch, I didn't have any way to measure distance. So I was like, I like GPS'd it on like Google Maps. And I was like, all right, if I run around my apartment 5 times.
Outside.
Not
in
your
not in my
I thought
apartment.
you meant like a hyped up dog, just like sprinting
Circles
around.
around.
I am a bit of a border collie. You gotta run me or I get a
You're
little
like,
crazy.
we're on lap 154.
All right, where's that? And it was just like I think I picked up a pair of shoes from like, they were definitely not running shoes. They were like, I don't know, we could say like generic like exercise shoes, something like that.
Coveralls.
Yeah, they worked. They worked. And trying to come back to that through this experience of like, what was something that would have helped me when I was starting? And I mean, I spent a lot of time looking up Runner's World articles where I was like, where should I start? Or like, what do you wear? And a lot of these things, I think like a big overarching theme is there's no wrong questions, and that this is all, and all the questions are very legitimate, especially when you're into something brand new.
What are some things you wish you were told when you first started running?
I wish somebody told me when I started running that I don't have to feel horrible every time. I thought that running was just like, all right, I think maybe I just watched Rocky too many times.
Sure.
And I was like, I feel like you just have to run really hard everywhere you go. And
Kind of having that moment of triumph where you're like cheering at the end.
It took me so long to like realize that like, oh, wait, I should probably try to settle in and get comfortable. I'd never heard like easy run or a conversational pace. And I just like ran really hard. Only way I would do it is just like running until I'd be like hands on my knees and be like, that was really hard. And I'd like go lay on my bed afterwards. Like, I feel bad. And if someone had been like, it doesn't have to be hard all the time, I think that would be really helpful at the beginning. And as I continued to run a little more, just having somebody tell me, you should probably eat a little food before you run. And maybe even eat some food when you're running. I just thought that's how you felt. I was like, wow, I feel so bad when I run for this amount of time. And I thought that's just kind of how it was.
I think that's a whole misconception with like working out in general, where you're like, oh, I can't feel like I'm progressing unless my body feels like it's been taxed. But there's stuff going on behind the scenes that you're building that endurance and you're building that habit like you're talking about.
I work with people every day that feel like for their workout to be successful, they need to be exhausted and they need to like be pushed to the limit. And it's like, actually, we want to have like enough work and then recovery and some work and some recovery. And we don't want any one of these days to detract from the overall week. So we want to think like, you don't need these like maximum efforts. It's more steady and consistent over time.
Could that have a negative impact if you're constantly going hard?
It eventually it's like diminishing returns. That'll work. You'll probably get like very quick results for a little bit because you're doing so hard and your body's really trying to adapt. But that's super short-lived, and eventually that leads into like very quick burnout, overtraining, overuse injuries. You're not set up to do that 100% effort every day.
So what should that first run like feel like? What do you say?
It'll feel a little challenging and a little awkward. I always compare it to scuba diving. Scuba diving, because people are like, oh, I should just be able to go out the door and run. And I'm like, well, it's like, you're gonna have to like figure it out. No one is like, well, I'm just gonna go scuba dive today. But they're like, people just think that they should know immediately how to run. And it's like, hey, we'll get there. And like, it'll feel a little clunky, it'll feel a little awkward, but keep at it. Like any good thing, it's worth waiting for.
Yeah, you kind of need that like baby deer phase where you feel like you're learning how to move your legs in that motion.
You're like, oh, I remember, like I did it. I remember that, like my first run, I was like, I'm just gonna like run down the street, and I was really nervous that someone was gonna see me, because I was like, oh, what if they're gonna know? They're gonna know that I'm not a runner. They're gonna know right away. And like, there's nothing wrong with being new at something. Like, you just gotta embrace the beginner mindset. And like, I'm lucky that I have a lot of friends who've been running for a long time. And the mindset for me always was, since I was usually the newest runner in whatever space I was in, that just meant I stood the most to gain. That if someone's like been around a long time, they're already like pretty saturated with information and knowledge. And I'm like, well, that just means I can learn a little bit more than you do today. I have more to gain.
That's a good way to look at it.
And I think what you're talking about with that fear of like being perceived with your run, like you're literally running by those people. You're not going to see them again. They're not going to think twice about you.
They're so busy in their own life. No one's going to pay attention.
And also, like, to judge someone running by you is just, no one is thinking that. Everyone's thinking like, wow, I should probably run.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I could do that. Yeah. And they can. They can.
So when you kicked off, I feel like people who start running typically fall into one of two categories of, immediately they're like, this is great, I'm loving this is what I've been meaning to do, or this is excruciating, this is tough for me, I don't think I like this. What category do you think you kind of fell into between those two?
I think I immediately fell into, this is excruciating. This feels terrible. I think something's wrong. But I was just at a point in my life where I needed something to change. And there had been a moment when I was like looking in the mirror, like talking to myself, being like, you're not giving up on this. I feel like I'd given up on too many things. And I was like, I think it was a similar thing where it's like, all right, I'm just gonna, if I can do this for 4 weeks, if I can get through 4 weeks of trying to run, and after the end of that, I don't like it, whatever. We'll get to that bridge when we come to it. I had to see it through to the end.
How did you feel at the end of those 4 weeks?
Like I needed 4 more weeks of running, and maybe 4 more weeks after that. I was like, oh, because like I think the thing is, you'll get that a little glimmer. here and there where you're like, oh, that was actually pretty fun there for a second. And then I went back to feeling bad. But I can see how it works. I can see how this happens. I think that the chance, that opportunity is enough for a lot of people that they're like, okay, I see why people do this.
So even though it's the How to Start Running program, there are still tidbits in there that I feel could be beneficial to anyone. So what do you think is a tip that could be beneficial to more experiential runners that they don't realize they might be doing wrong, or something that they just don't realize they should be doing?
All runners, especially experienced runners, I think that everybody undersells like how, like we were talking about it earlier, like that you don't have to run everything so hard. That I'm a big easy days easy, hard days hard guy. And a majority of your stuff's gonna be an easier day. A lot of people think I really have to break my back to get this, to make progress. I know for me, once I'd been running for a while and I had like been training and I ran my first marathon and it was really exciting. And I thought as soon as that was done, I was like, wow, I have to hit everything after this so hard. And it went really poorly. That led to like really quick injury, quick burnout. Especially when people start to like find some success and some enjoyment in running. Like a lot of things, we're like, ooh, more is better. And yes and no. More can be better. Also isn't necessarily always better. I think that's a good thing for us all, both beginner and experienced runners, to focus on. Like, I love running mileage. It feels great for me, but it's taken me years to get to that. Like, thinking very long term with it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
how do you convince your runners to go easier? What are like some tips to keep it easy?
I mean, I think that the easiest tip is always, when we say it's a conversational paced run, it is literally a conversation. You should be able to have a conversation while you're running. If you don't know, you should go run with your friends or anybody that you can talk to. If you take your phone with you, get on a call. If you can't talk to somebody while you're running, it's a little too quick to be considered a conversational pace run. Now, especially when we're starting out, it's a little hard to find. In that first month or two of running, that conversation pace is elusive. But once we've spent a little bit more time as a runner, we can really start to find out what that feels like for us.
So just very simply then, to wrap all this up, why do you love running? Why should people run?
It's a big question.
You can run any direction with that.
Run any direction.
Run any direction. I love running. Running changed my life. It's an opportunity to get a little bit better every single day. And I feel like in a world where I feel a lot of people are under a lot of pressure all the time and a lot of things are outside of your control. This is like its own thing that can just be for you. And you can be competitive with it. You don't have to be. It can be just time for you. It can be time with your friends. It's become the way that I navigate life, and it's like this thing that I can always come back to whether I'm living in a new place or like I have a new career or new friends. Running has been very steady and constant for me in its many forms, that no matter what, I can always come back to it. And it's this chance for me to, like, say the rest of my day is terrible. If my run was okay, that's still a pretty good day. And I'm a big fan of the phrase, the way you are in one thing is the way you are in all things. And especially if you're going through some turmoil in life, if you find some stability and progress and joy in running, that translates into everything else.
Was there a surprising benefit you experienced from running that keeps bringing you back now that you continue to experience it?
I have met my best friends in the world through running, and from all sorts of different walks of life and from different places, but we have this very core shared interest of progress. I just never expected that. Like when I started running, it was just like this thing to do by myself, for myself. But now I get to feel like the luckiest kid in the world because almost every day of the week I get to run with my best friends. And we go play outside, which is pretty
Adorable.
fun. And it just didn't, I had no idea that would come. And like even sitting right here, running's given me the best times and opportunities in my life. And I'm really grateful for that.
And it's giving you the chance to share that love and hopefully spark it in other people, which is one of the most beautiful things you could do.
Right? Running is for everybody. There is always another seat at the table, and it's got to give it a try.
Well, thank you for joining us today. This has been a lovely conversation. I really appreciated your input.
Anytime.
Check out our How to Start Running program with Runner's World. Thanks for watching. For more info on our guests, click the link in the show notes below. We also have a few exciting opportunities coming up to train with Runner's World. So if you want to get a bib to one of the hottest races of the year, make sure you are a Runner's World Plus member. We have an exciting offer for new subscribers, which you can access at the link in the show notes. Now get moving.